I'm Gloria Ledoux here on the CU Compliance Connection by League Info site, bringing you the Compliance Outlook for a review of compliance effective dates for regulations that may be impacting your credit union in the second and third quarters of 2019. Nothing really earth-shattering here for most credit unions, but for those that do offer prepaid accounts, there are new rules that become effective on April 1st and are pretty substantial. In the third quarter, a few things that we need to be thinking about from the CFPB's perspective is our compliance with payday lending rules, if we're offering a payday lending alternative to our members. And we need to consider if our credit union wants to start using the updated Uniform Residential Lending Application under Regulation B, which allows for optional use beginning on July 1st. NACHA is also keeping us on our toes and providing for earlier funds availability for same-day ACH credits that are processed in the first already existing processing window. Last but not least, NCUA didn't want to be left out, so they have some new rules related to private flood insurance that become effective on July 1st. So let's dive a little deeper into each. Prepaid accounts, what does that mean? And what does the rule cover? As you can see on the screen, the CFPB under Regulation E defined what types of accounts would be covered under the prepaid rules. The first is a payroll card account. Credit unions that offer those type of accounts for members will need to comply with the new requirements. The same with government benefit accounts. Bullets number 3 and 4 may be giving some credit unions some angst, especially if they're offering reloadable or prepaid gift cards. Thankfully, you don't have to sweat it too much because the CFPB did provide some clarification of what the definition of a prepaid account does not include. So if you look at the last two bullets, gift cards and general use prepaid card are two types of cards that the credit unions typically offer and thankfully would be exempt under the rules. So go ahead, breathe a little sigh of relief, and I'll show you why. For those of you that may be offering prepaid accounts that meet the definition, there are some new disclosure requirements you will need to prepare for. Thankfully, within Regulation E, there are some model disclosures that we can use to ensure compliance. But overall, there are quite a few disclosure requirements related to the implementation of this new rule. In addition to those disclosure requirements, the credit union may need to provide periodic statements, error resolution and liability protections, and certain receipts at electronic terminals. Additionally, coverage in Regulation E, including pre-authorized electronic funds transfer requirements, restrictions on issuing an access device, requirements to submit agreements to the CFPB, and remittance transfer restrictions will also apply to prepaid accounts. Last but not least, there are certain record retention requirements that will also apply to prepaid accounts. I know many of you are feeling like you may have just dodged a bullet on that one. On to the third quarter and what becomes effective for us to consider. Let's start with the changes made to the Uniform Residential Loan Application. Changes were made back in 2016 and 2017 by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. However, because of the CFPB's rulemaking authority over Regulation B and Regulation C, or HMDA, where we've seen so many changes on the data collection requirements, they also reviewed the URLA. The CFPB deemed the new URLA to be in compliance with not only Regulation B, but also the changes made to HMDA, or Regulation C. While this URLA is not required to be used by regulation, it is deemed to be in compliance with the regulation. Now, for those credit unions that sell their loans to Fannie or Freddie, those agencies will require you to use the revised URLA for new loan applications received on or after February 1st, 2020. If your credit union wants to get a jump start, you are permitted to actually start using the revised URLA on July 1st, 2019. Here's an example of the new demographic information section of the URLA that complies with Regulation B and Regulation C, which was revised. If your credit union offers a payday alternative loan program, please take note. There were some rules issued by the CFPB that became effective in January of 2018 that govern the underwriting of certain covered short-term and long-term balloon payment loans. A few important things for those credit unions who do offer those payday alternative loan programs to consider. First and foremost, it doesn't matter if your credit union is a federal or state charter. If your program is in compliance with the provisions outlined in NCUA Rules, Part 70121, the loans are exempt from the requirements under the CFPB's rules. Hopefully this covers most credit unions offering those alternative payday loan programs, and you can breathe a little easier with that exemption. Second, although the required compliance date is August 19, 2019, there is currently a stay in place pursuant to a court order. This means that credit unions have no obligation to comply under the court order until the stay is lifted. Credit unions should stay tuned and keep a very close eye on changes with this rule if they offer covered loans. If the credit union does have a covered loan under the rules, there are significant requirements that must be complied with, including certain ability to repay tests and underwriting requirements, payment withdrawal restrictions, payment transfer disclosures, registration of loans within the CFPB, a required compliance program, and certain record retention provisions. Also, something to keep in mind and a watchful eye on is a proposed rule, which has not yet been finalized, that would either completely eliminate or delay the mandatory underwriting provisions of the rule until November 19th, 2020. Moving off the CFPB and now on to NACHA, credit unions should note that effective on September 20th, 2019, funds from SameDay ACH credits that are processed by the originating depository financial institution, or ODFI, in the existing first processing window, which is 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, will need to be made available by 1:30 p.m. in the RDFI, or Receiving Depository Financial Institution's local time. Funds that are processed in the existing second processing window, which is 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time, will continue to be made available by 5 p.m. local time for the RDFI. Although we have some time, credit unions should keep in mind that there are some additional changes becoming effective for SameDay ACH in 2020. First is the increase in the dollar transaction limit from $25,000 to $100,000, which becomes effective on March 20th. And then the expansion of the SameDay ACH processing window from 2:45 to 4:45, which will go into effect on September 18th. Now, to round out our third quarter updates, we have some changes taking place for flood insurance. The NCUA amended their rules, which become effective on July 1st, 2019, related to the acceptance of private flood insurance. The rules indicate that credit unions must accept private flood insurance in satisfaction of the rule if the policy meets the requirements of coverage. We'll talk about that in a minute and how the credit union can determine that. The credit union also has discretion to accept private flood insurance not issued under the National Flood Insurance Program and does not meet the definition under the rules in certain situations. For example, where the coverage is in the amount required by the credit union, the insurer is licensed, coverage is for both the mortgagor and mortgagee as lost payees, and if there is sufficient protection of the designated loan. NCUA Rules Part 760 were also amended to provide definitions for both private flood insurance and a mutual aid society. As I mentioned, the definition of private flood insurance is important because it outlines the requirements that will require credit unions to accept the policy. Thankfully, credit unions will be given some extra assistance to ensure the policy complies with the rules, because within the actual policy, or as an endorsement to the policy, it should contain language that indicates this policy meets the definition of private flood insurance contained in 42 U.S.C. 4012 AB 7. If that language is not included in the policy, the credit union will have the option to accept the policy as noted on the previous slide. The rule also provides an option for credit unions to accept private flood insurance issued by a mutual aid society, which is included on the slide for review and consideration. That wraps up the regulatory changes occurring in the third quarter. As you can see, there's still quite a bit on the compliance plate for credit unions. That is why we thought it was important to reiterate the resources that are available to assist credit unions. Specifically, we've highlighted InfoSight and CU Policy Pro. These compliance support tools are typically provided for free or at a very low cost through your league or association and can be truly instrumental in managing compliance. InfoSight provides an overview of compliance requirements along with additional materials, resources, and links to further assist credit unions with understanding compliance with laws and regulations, both state and federal. The system also tries to aggregate helpful resources on topics so that you don't have to spend the time researching. Check it out. We are confident that it will make your life just a little bit easier. As an additional reminder, CU Policy Pro is our policy management system that provides over 240 model policies for credit unions to customize. You shouldn't need to create any policy from scratch. If you aren't familiar with these products, please reach out to us or your league or association to learn more. You don't have to travel this compliance road alone. We are all in it together. As always, thank you so much for joining us at the CU Compliance Connection by League InfoSight.